Hello everyone, this is new. Hopefully you can all hear me all right. My name is Anna Strasobi. 2 years ago today, I was in your shoes. I was leading ESG or Sustainability at Zero and AWS customers on stage with Deloitte and the government of South Australia talking about how we were using technology to transform our own organizations. And I'm proud to say 2 years on, I'm here today to share some insights with not just my own firsthand experience, learnings from Amazon, but what we're seeing across our broad base of customers. And I'm guessing the reason you're here today, we all know the race to transform our businesses for social and environmental sustainability is truly here. It's picking up pace and it isn't easy. We know from our own work, it's complex, it's quickly evolving, and it is impossible to do without good data and technology. And so over the next 40 minutes, I'll share some insights, some tips, and also a deep dive into the story of work done by one of our customers, Port of Brisbane, along with help from one of our AWS partners, Tech Connect, who are both in the audience, to showcase how they're taking meaningful action now. We have 5.37 years until 2030. For those in the know on climate science, you'll know that there's a lot of irreversible impacts we're forecasting by as early as 2030. And so Australia, starting with what we experience at home, even though sustainability is a global issue, has real impacts here. And one of the things that you'll hear over and over from New South Wales as well as the broader country is this goal to decarbonize Australia by a certain percentage by 2030. The exact number is 43% of emissions reduction levels compared to 2005. We're currently 5% of the way to that target. Whether we choose to arm ourselves with technology now will make or break what we wake up to in just 5 birthdays. So, AWS, when we talk to customers, a lot of the questions we get are, well, if I use technology to build technology to make me faster in sustainability, what impacts does that have when I actually deploy that technology? How do I build the technology in a way that's efficient to begin with, for my cost, for the emissions I generate, for the water I burn? And so we talk about the intersection of sustainability and technology in 3 key ways. One is sustainability of the cloud. How sustainable, how environmentally efficient are our actual data centers and operations? Sustainability in the cloud, when you're actually developing technology to execute, how do you know that when it's executing, it's as efficient as possible? So for example, Trainium is one of our high-performance machine learning chips. It reduces the time to train generative AI models from months to hours, reducing the cost of electricity by up to 50%, but also emissions reduction by up to 30%. Where I spend most of the time, what gets me most excited, is sustainability through the cloud. How do we actually use the cloud technologies to accelerate the sustainability goals that you all have? And so, if we were to make exponential progress every hour, every day, every week, every month, every year, until 2030, if we find the right capital, the right partnerships, if we invest $35.5 billion, we can achieve that meaningful 2030 emissions progress that we're seeking. Seems like a big number. The coordination is terribly hard. But to put that in perspective, it's only 0.14% of our GDP. Now let's contrast this. At current projections, what would 2030 look like for us? According to a study by the Melbourne Sustainable Society Institute, the cost of effective climate change would be $35.5 billion compared to the potential damage of $584.5 billion economic loss. For those that deal with real estate, just know that $570 billion of this is forecasted to come from the loss in property value. Now, from an economic standpoint, clearly it makes sense for us to act. Again, the coordination is hard. But I think the real human impacts, the societal and the environmental impacts are interlinked. What happens to our natural world happens to our people. And so just to give you a sense for some of the impacts that CSIRO are already forecasting with high confidence. Hot days become more frequent and hotter. Sea levels rise, oceans become more acidic, snow depths decline, extreme rainfall events intensify, drought increase over southern Australia, harsher fire weather in southern and eastern Australia, etc., etc. Now, seems like a complex challenge. How are we going to overcome this? The good news is we do have the knowledge to overcome complex challenges in our social fabric. Dating back to the first industrial revolution, there are lessons that we've already learned about how to take on immense challenges like this. First, embrace the need for change. Stay open-minded and adapt. Denial and opposition won't work long. Second, the more confident you are that the existing business model you have is fantastic, the more easily you'll be disrupted. question for you. How confident are you that your existing business model and priorities are the optimal ones in 2025, 2030, 2040, given the changes in the stakeholder landscape, access to capital, the physical landscape? How confident are we that our competitors aren't actually stealthily innovating without us knowing and already trying to find their sustainable competitive advantage? And so that number 3 is really where we're talking to a lot of clients to help them find that intersection of commercial and sustainability value for them. One learning from the Industrial Revolution is there's essentially 3 flavors: go big, go niche, or go home. As an example of the go niche, when the cotton industry was mechanized, hand weavers found their niche in custom pieces that can only be made by hand with a deep knowledge of their customer. For those that chose no position, those were the first to go bankrupt. And so another question we often ask our customers is, have you thought about your sustainability competitive advantage? And have you started working on it? Now, business is business. Every industry, every function of the business will be impacted by ESG or sustainability in some way. It comes in so many different flavors. Yes, there's a plethora of industry-specific use cases around social environmental sustainability, but the storyline is often the same. I sit in a certain industry. I'm already maintaining business functions that I know are impacted, whether it's how I source materials, how people trust or affiliate sentiment with my brand, am I staying on top of the latest regulation, but also when all functions of the business are taking action, how do they actually integrate social environmental insights into the way they make decisions across not just the way they do reporting, how they make decisions in their supply chain, how they use power, etc. And so often when we talk to customers, given Australia, if we look across Asia Pacific, Japan was one of the first countries to install regulation. Modern Slavery Act came first. It asked companies of a certain size to disclose what they were doing to manage the social and environmental performance of their supply chain. And so with ESG reporting, whether it's supply chain or carbon, we're seeing regulation as a strong and increasing driver, not just in Australia, but all of our APJ countries, to make customers at least do the bare minimum, to take that account of where they stand today and start thinking about how they're actually going to do better each year. And so decarbonization is often the first area. We talk about the different scopes of carbon emissions, scope 1, 2, and 3. And often those that we directly control, like power, is the first source of efficiency gains that our customers find. They realize that they could be using power more efficiently, saving their costs, but also reducing their emissions. But then they start uncovering a bunch of other decarbonization opportunities across the business. Often those either have a cost reduction or some kind of a commercial positive value. When they start looking across their operations, whether it's manufacturing or really anyone that produces a good or service, then they start looking at how efficient they're being to begin with. They thought they've optimized for water and power, but when looking at it with a slightly different lens, they suddenly realize that the opportunities around circular economy, around clean energy generation, suddenly looks different than when they assessed this opportunity a couple of years ago. And so all parts of operations across businesses, we're seeing different parts transform first, given the materiality to sustainability. Supply chain is a notoriously hard part of the carbon emissions accounting transparency management journey. And so scope 3 or value chain emissions from suppliers down to customer usage is a big topic that we're working on with a lot of customers today. We're having customers that realize that, especially given what they do, maybe carbon emissions, yes, certainly important, but what about all the other sustainability impacts? What about water, waste, the impact on biodiversity, fauna? And so we're also having customers that are starting to venture outside of climate to really figure out how they can use data to make decisions in the other ESG areas, of course, also including the social sustainability aspects. I would say carbon is kind of front and center right now, but we all acknowledge, well, we got to do it for all of our material ESG areas. And so how can technology help? I think there's 6 broad buckets. First, it's removing data blind spots. If you're asked how much carbon emissions are generating from your operations, well, you need to know a lot, because carbon emissions is generated just by us simply breathing and existing. Now we're trying to track everything from where we got materials from, how it was shipped to us, what we did to those materials, how those materials were shipped to somewhere else, how someone else used them. At Zero, we were a software business, arguably simpler than some to decarbonize. And we had 800, thousands of data sources we need just to calculate our carbon footprint. And those data sources are only mounting by the month, literally. And so how do we get all the data that we need, collect the ones that we don't have today, and get it into one place to start unlocking these other 5 benefits? Efficiency. Compliance and reporting, we know it's painful. We hear a lot of teams spending months on end just putting together the annual report and the sustainability disclosure company every year. There's software out there to already help you format your ESG data into the ESG indices that you're being solicited by, into the disclosure frameworks that you want to adhere to. This isn't something that has to be done manually. And then how can we recycle any efficiencies we get from saving humans time to getting them to spend on more strategic work to actually help move the business forward? Speed. Carbon insights, typical story. I have an environmental consultant. I get my footprint once a year, lots of Excels and manual asking around the business for data sets. Now, what if in near real time, as soon as you chose a supplier, as soon as you made a decision in your plant, you knew the carbon emissions impacts, you knew the sustainability risks that were associated with it. You knew at the point of decision making, as well as in retrospect, as well as looking forward. But that speed to get to that insight is key. And so how do you match hundreds of thousands of data sets to a carbon emissions factor to do the multiplication you need just to get the carbon emissions number that you really want? And of course, at the right granularity. Artificial intelligence is great at helping to match these large data sets really quickly to enable the other insights we're about to talk about. And so carbon, as an example, we get asked, hey, I know my footprint overall across scopes 1, 2, and 3, but it's really aggregated, especially in scope 3. It's not granular enough to know exactly which supplier I should have a conversation with or which functional lead I should start with first. And so richer insights, both in granularity as well as scope, is another way that technology can help. When we arm everyone with insights, how do we actually get them to take action in the day-to-day workflows they're used to? How do we help our frontline banking managers, our procurement leads, our customer service representatives have the insights that they need in the interfaces and the workflows that they're used to, but just injecting those sustainability insights in there, truly enabling company-wide transformation? And company alignment, as we hold our executives and our boards accountable to help us drive this progress, how do we give them the insights they need to let them know where we're tracking, where we might need some help? And so we also have customers who are already building TCFD, or Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosure, aligned frameworks for their leadership. Hopefully you're starting to see that a lot of the things that we need to do simply aren't possible with manual processes, with emails, with Excels. Not only is there a ton of data provenance and governance issues, but the workflow issues are painful. And so when we polled in partnership with Incisive, 70% of respondents across Australia, New Zealand, and India believed it is impossible to meet their sustainability goals without technology, yet only 14% agree that they're using technology effectively today. Now that gets AWS and our technologists very excited because we are more than happy to help. Here are some of the challenges that we're hearing and experiencing ourselves. First, siloed data sources. There is data from all across the business that we need to calculate things like carbon footprint, to understand things like modern slavery risk. Every part of the business, every tool, and every system can be useful or crucial in some way. But it's time and resource intensive. Yes, we might have pockets of data, but really, how do we get our workers to collect data, use data in ways that are less manual? Lack of unified standards. Everyone's trying to report and stay ahead of compliance, but these 20 to 100 page PDFs telling us what we need to report on just simply aren't clear enough. And so we have a lot of customers, yes, they're interested in technology, but they're just trying to stay ahead of what they need to disclose next year and then trying to find the technologies that fit. And so for those that are shopping for software, just know that audit angle is still important, something that we encourage our customers to think about as they start their journey. Inconsistent data quality and integrity. So 25-30% estimated average error rate in emissions measurements. For those that have used estimators, especially for scope 3, you know that there's a chance for inflated numbers, but also certainly not granular enough numbers to help you take action. So for example, if you are carbon neutral and using carbon offsets across your scopes, if you have overinflated carbon emissions numbers, you're only overspending carbon offsets, but you're not really getting the insights you need to take meaningful action. Limited insights, we talked about the various versions of that. I think one of the common themes is once a year data simply isn't good enough. Near real time would be great, but also who actually gets to see the insights we generate? We see a lot of sustainability teams and data science teams spinning up great dashboards and proof of concepts and having a really hard time pushing those insights out to the wider business. Here are some ways that artificial intelligence specifically can help, and it falls into these 4 broad buckets. It helps you automate data collection, helps you bridge data gaps and build models, helps you check if you're compliant, and helps you generate reports and insights. So I'll give you an example. One of our US media entertainment companies, customers, they have a wide set of vendors for every event, every major campaign. They wanted to know which vendors at the time of decision, at the time of RFP response, they should choose not just for their services and price, but also for their alignment to the sustainability goals that they had set out as an organization. And so they had built a tool that at the time of RFP response can help the supplier guesstimate their carbon emissions and include that as a part of the response that the customer would then ultimately assess. And so they automated data collection from the suppliers that they needed to calculate emissions footprint in a way that was viable for their relationship. They used the information they collected to calculate these emissions on the fly. They made sure that the way they were calculating emissions aligned not only with their own calculation methodology, but certainly one that would stand in scrutiny to certain certifications or other commitments that they had. And then, of course, to report on it, to share the great work that they've done as part of one of many updates that they would have, let's say, in their next annual report. But there's so many use cases that we see. Here is a smattering of some. There are plenty of industry-specific use cases, but just to list some that might be relevant for folks in the audience. If we split into analyze, optimize, reimagine, especially with scope 3, a lot of the conversations are across the whole value chain. It's not just your suppliers, not just your customers, it's about the whole value chain. And so it's split into sort of upstream to downstream. But let's say, for example, data and technology can help you understand the hotspots in your supply chain. Where is the most ESG risk? Where is the most carbon intensity? Where do I start? And how do I really choose decarbonization pathways that are aligned to the most material areas where I need to do work? How do I monitor that I'm making progress? And then how do I take all the data that I'm accruing and use that to deliver data-driven customer or user experiences with that sustainability lens? How can I optimize the way I run my supply chain from the time I RFI, RFP, to the time I make a decision, to the time I track what I've done in retrospect? How do I integrate social and environmental risk assessment, carbon emissions insights, whether they're First Nations owned, whether they're female led, whatever your goals are, how do you integrate that into your procurement processes and tools? Eco-efficiency solutions, for example, reducing resource usage, we talked about that. Route optimization, folks with logistics, those that are taking on new EV fleets, a lot of conversations about how to green the logistics chain. Reimagining, sustainable design, how do we do R&D with technology and get to the right idea really quickly and saving money later? How do we use this concept of a digital twin, a virtual representation of operating models, whether it's a manufacturing process or a power plant? How do we represent it virtually, start testing or modeling what an optimal sustainability scenario would look like before we actually put these ideas into practice? Eliminating waste, a very big topic for our retail customers. I could keep going. Please talk to me or your AWS account manager if you're interested in use cases specifically to your industry. But as you can tell, there are endless opportunities. I wanted to share 4 examples from customers of ours that span different sectors, different industries, and different purposes for why they care about sustainability. Qantas, I'm sure you guys are all familiar, they used AWS to identify the most fuel-efficient flight paths. It not only saved them money on fuel, which made up the majority of their expenditure, but also 90% of their emissions was based on fuel consumption. There isn't enough sustainable aviation fuel in the world. There isn't enough green fleets or carriers in the world. So fuel optimization was a major challenge for them and one that they used AWS to solve for. For those that saw the keynote, you might remember the name Terrascope. They're one of our enterprise fit independent software vendors built on AWS. They help large businesses increase their confidence in their carbon emissions calculation. They use AI-powered emissions factor matching. That's what we talked about before, about matching these large data sets to carbon emissions factors for that really quick calculation. Hotspot analytics, decarbonization recommendations, and even ways to engage with suppliers, for example, if you need more data. The Earth System Grid Federation. We have a program called Amazon Sustainability Data Initiative, where we work with partners to onboard mass amounts of data for others to use. For example, Amazon enabled climate researchers worldwide to access and analyze the largest and most updated climate simulation data set in the world in 2021. This was the data set that was used to create the United Nations IPCC 6 assessment report. And last but not least, ENGIE, a global utility company. They automated energy management and created a common data hub to support data-driven decision-making for sustainability. They had 3,500 buildings outfitted with 160,000 sensors, all of which was providing that data into AWS. So where do we get started? We see customers where sustainability can sit in a part of the organization that's often siloed from a lot of the core operations. We see those that might come up in a certain part of the business, legal, marketing, that might find it hard to really connect on a day-to-day with their digital IT peers. How do we start driving company alignment? If there is that alignment already, how do we deepen the conversation to the focus areas that we really want to work on together across sustainability, digital IT, and the rest of the business leaders? And so here are some practical tips that will hopefully help you on your journey. The first, we hear a lot of sustainability leaders, they know what they need to do, but they're struggling to break through to get the rest of the business on board. So first step is aligning on the biggest sustainability pain points, risks, and opportunities across the business. What issues, what risks, what major customer-facing opportunities, new innovation opportunities would the CEO and the board get excited about? How do we elevate our conversation, our thinking around sustainability to a true C-suite and board level conversation? And once everyone understands truly the risks as well as opportunities for the business, how do we align, not just across digital sustainability, marketing, customer, procurement, et cetera, to take action together? Second, get all the internal and external help you can rally across different skill sets. It is a lot to ask. No one is a climate scientist, a computer scientist, a business leader, all in one. And so how do we get all of the help that we can get and to build a SWAT team of the right skill sets to move quickly and informed? Third, think big. Thinking small is a self-fulfilling prophecy. This is one of the principles that we preach when we use Amazon's innovation methodology with our customers to help them come up with product ideas. And so if we focus so much on the pain points we have now, we see a lot of customers who are adopting a software, let's say to solve ESG reporting pain points, adopting a software to solve carbon accounting pain points. What about those major decarbonization pathways? What is it about EV charging stations that you're going to innovate? What is it about the manufacturing process that you're going to change to be the most water and energy efficient? These kind of ideas are bigger. They relate to core business. They are the pathways to taking meaningful action, but they're not small ideas. So if we get too focused on the pain points now, we're always reactive. We're never going to save enough time to tackle the meaningful things. And so think big, no matter how impossible it might seem right now. Setting strong visions can go a long way. Working backwards from the needs of the customer end user and partnering with IT and digital to articulate and document what you need and what you want the technology to do. We see a lot of customers issuing RFIs, RFPs. They don't know exactly what they need. There's a lot of vendors that are kind of confusing them. Everyone sounds really appealing, but if you have a clear idea of what you really need up front, it'll save a lot of pain and time in trying to find the right solution. But it starts with, who is this tool? Who's this solution ultimately for? It's for a real human in procurement. It's for a real leader that's a part of our senior leadership team. It's for a real customer service representative somewhere in our fleet of hundreds of thousands. How do we actually design a tool that's geared for their day-to-day workflow, for their incentives, for their pain points, for their needs, for their knowledge set, so that when we actually bring the solution to life, people will actually use it? Fifth, create conditions for innovation to thrive. Those that have been on the digital journey with sustainability, you know there is no silver bullet. There is no one technology that will do it all. But there are multiple technologies that can do multiple things and together create or enable company-wide transformation. But you had to start experimenting. What's good about this approach? What's not so good about that one? Get lots of advice and be ready that the first technology you pick up or you think is the right answer might not, again, do it all. So how do you experiment quickly to get to the right answer faster? Choose a sustainable tech platform, of course. If you're building technology and or adopting technology, ask some questions about how their technology runs. How sustainable is the deployment of their technology? And how does that impact your own carbon footprint? And lastly, partner, plan, and build with the future in mind. In terms of next steps, regardless what part of the business you sit in, get your sustainability, digital, IT, and business leaders in a room. Start the conversation around those pain points, risks, and opportunities we talked about. Explore what's available and gather insights from tech platforms, apps, and partners around what they're seeing, not just what their technology does. What are they seeing from peers in your industry? What are they seeing other companies kind of learn after adopting the technology for a year? And once you start having conversations, you're going to learn so quickly. And lastly, run pilots. We know it's a cost-constrained environment for a lot of us. How do we experiment frugally to prove what digital technology is capable of for accelerating sustainability efforts? Get some wins on the board, hopefully some learnings as well, and hopefully expand your work in the future. We talk a lot about the future. A lot of us sustainability folk are fearful of the future. As Peter Drucker said, well, the best way to predict the future is to create it. Next, we will be talking about Port of Brisbane, as I mentioned, and one of our customers who is building the future with us together now. All right. So originally we were hoping to have the Port of Brisbane's enterprise architect here to share with you firsthand some of their great work, but he's feeling a little under the weather. So we thank the Port of Brisbane for giving myself the permission to share some of their work on their behalf. We do have Port of Brisbane in the room, as well as our AWS partner Tech Connect to help them bring this to life. The Port of Brisbane is one of Australia's fastest growing container ports and Queensland's largest multi-cargo port. The port handles approximately 55 billion of trade through the port, comprising more than 50% of Queensland's international trade. The Port of Brisbane is located at the mouth of the Brisbane River and in the Moreton Bay Marine Park. It extends over multiple prescients and covers an area in excess of 1,800 hectares. What is known as Fishermen's Islands today is mostly reclaimed land from the judged spoil from maintaining the shipping channel. Here are some of the business and ESG highlights they achieved last year. In addition to achievements like a 5-star rating on the Global Real Estate Sustainability Benchmark for their holistic environmental sustainability performance, it's great to see their work in other ESG areas. For example, mental health support, as well as community support. The focus of our session today will be that achievement on the very top left. This is a perfect example, can be clear of the direct commercial value that sustainability enabled for them. And so that focus is around this $500 million sustainability-linked loan. With help from AWS partner Tech Connect, the Port of Brisbane is able to collect and report on agreed KPIs for the loan while providing data lineage and traceability to substantiate the sources of the data. So for them, it starts with their overall Thrive business strategy, of which planet is one of the 4 key pillars. We talked about material or materiality. What are those most important sustainability risk, pain points, opportunities? For them, they decided as a starting point that their most material topics would include air quality, water quality, and energy efficiency as a starting point. They had a brief to develop a green dashboard that would support their sustainability objectives, but they knew it wasn't as easy as just whipping together a dashboard and calling it a day. They were thinking about sustainability's impact across the business, and they wanted to build the data and tech foundations to suit the business needs now and later. They started with a big objective. They want to be the leading digital port in Australia, and they launched their data lake pilot program with a sustainability focus to accelerate this. It aligns with their information management governance policies, allows using real-time information about port assets and how they're used, is scalable in that it can easily incorporate new data sources as they emerge or become available, is agnostic to any particular BI tool, and it guarantees security over sensitive data. This is a view of their green dashboard, which started out as an initiative to create a more efficient mechanism for consolidating sustainability metrics as a single source of truth. Now, getting into those material areas, water. In order to get real-time metrics on water usage, they had to make capital investments. They had to replace a large percentage of old mechanical water meters with pulse meters, install data loggers to all meters, including trade waste meters. Data loggers also had to be certified for billing purposes. The project took 12 months to complete before they had visibility across the entire fleet of water meters. They're now starting to realize the value of the capital investment in other areas like automated billing. You'll see here that the granularity of some of the data available also lends itself to be manipulated for needs for different users. For example, their asset team has seen significant benefit with leak detection across the large port prescient. Air. It was also important to them to understand the air quality patterns across the port prescient and the factors that may influence it. Data from existing air quality meters across the port is fed into the data lake. Solar. As part of their commitment to reduce Scope 1 emissions, they have installed solar energy systems on most port-operated buildings. They're also installing these systems on new properties they're developing for tenants. And that data from these solar energy systems is fed into the data lake as well, and have provided them a greater insight into their energy consumption patterns. Older energy meters were also retrofitted with smart devices to ensure that they had visibility of energy consumption where solar systems had not yet been installed. So not only does a solution bring together data sets across water, air, and energy, it allows for different programming and data languages, easily search and generate insights, utilizes machine learning to help users. They've implemented an industry standard pattern for their data, applying the relevant governance and security to date as well. So with this solution, not only has it solved their need to report on and manage the agreed KPIs for this $500 million sustainability-linked loan, but it's helped them build the foundation for the Port of Brisbane to service sustainability data needs across the business for years to come. AWS and our partners would love to know how we could support you too. Please reach out to your AWS account manager to see how we and our software vendor and systems integration partners can help. Before you go, quick reminder to redeem your free 7-day skills builder if interesting. My contact info there if I can be helpful, and the QR code there to the superset of guidance we offer around sustainability to our AWS customers. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne. And we will be sending out the PowerPoint decks and all the presentations post this event, so you'll be able to receive that and get that QR code there too. But thank you to Anne. If you'd love, I loved hearing her insights. If you'd love to get to know Anne more, ask her some questions, she will be at the front of the stage after this session. We would also love your feedback in the Summit app. You can open that up and give Anne 5 stars for that session. And thank you again for joining us today. The expo floor is open till 1 p.m, so you can go and explore all of our partners, vendors, and our AWS booth. Enjoy your Innovation Day, and thank you for coming.